Ms. Hageman, I thought I want to perhaps spend a bit of time unpacking some of the conversation you just had with Mr. Norman. We both represent Western states, Rocky Mountain West, of course, from congressional neighbors, if you will. I represent northwestern Colorado, as you know, a long border with Wyoming. And I understand that you held a town hall pretty recently in Wyoming. I don't know if I...
10 of them.
What was that?
10.
10 of them.
Town halls.
So I am curious, so you've held a lot of them, way more than a lot of your colleagues on that side of the aisle, I will say, so I appreciate that. I've held 10 as well, my district, but I'm wondering, what are you hearing at those town halls? What do folks, I mean, just give us a sense of the flavor of what folks are concerned about in the state of Wyoming.
They're concerned about energy production, making sure that we get back to energy independence, which is part of the reason why I think it's so important to rename this to Gulf of America in light of the amount of production. It accounts for about 15% of our oil and gas production in the country. So that's one of the big issues that you hear wherever you go, whether you're in town halls or meetings, is the importance of protecting our energy industry. I hear a lot about ensuring that we are implementing the agenda and the policies that Donald Trump ran on. Okay. This being one of them. I think people are,
so wait,
again,
can
I think people
Can I just ask you a question on that? Let me just make sure, because I understood the first part. You said energy dominance, protecting the energy industry is something you hear from folks that you represent in Wyoming, and I appreciate that. And then you said implementing President Trump's policies. So you're saying that there are people at your town halls who are demanding that you rename the Gulf of Mexico?
I think it's across the entire board.
Has that come up at any of your town halls?
Actually, it has.
It has?
Yes, and it's also come up in the meetings
that I've had with people.
The people
of Wyoming were demanding that you rename the Gulf of Mexico?
See, you use the word demand.
Oh, asking.
Very few people come to me and demand anything.
Well, I guess
what people say is that they want us to implement the agenda that Donald Trump ran on.
And that includes renaming the Gulf of Mexico?
Because it has to do with pride in America and what America stands
Representative,
for.
I would just simply say...
Well, you can argue with me as
I'm
much
not talking about an argument.
To.
I would love to attend one of the...
I would welcome you to attend one of my town halls.
I am asking you an honest question, and you know, you're welcome to answer it any way you'd like. You're telling me and this committee that at one of your town halls...
I have said at my town halls
Let me finish my question.
At town halls and my meetings.
You'll have an opportunity to answer. Let
Okay.
me finish my question. You've held 10 town halls across Wyoming.
Yes.
And at those town halls, Wyoming residents, constituents have said to you, I would like you to rename the Gulf of Mexico. Has that happened?
Yes.
That has happened?
At the meetings that I have held, as I have said to you repeatedly now, I not only am holding town halls, I'm holding meetings with my constituents.
Sure.
The entire agenda that President Trump ran on, they've talked to me about no taxes on tips.
That's not, I'm not asking you about no taxes on tips.
They have talked to me about renaming the Gulf of America. They have talked to me about the oil and gas development that we have down there. They have talked about exporting energy out of the Gulf of America.
I'll reclaim my time because I think it's a shame.
And I would.
So you're calling me. I think what you're saying is you don't believe what I'm saying.
I'm saying that I would love to come to a town hall, and so I'll certainly look forward to. What we may do is we may just consider doing a town hall in Wyoming myself, so that I can get a better sense from Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated people of Wyoming as to what their priorities are. My sense is I'm not disagreeing with you that there are many folks in Wyoming who believe that the Congress ought to be pursuing policies that President Trump supports. What I am suggesting is that I find it a little bit unbelievable that of all the issues that the American people are dealing with, that my constituents are dealing with, that your constituents are dealing with, that at these town halls, renaming the Gulf of Mexico was a top priority. I suspect that the people of your state...
One of the things
that
you're ignoring...
talking, you'll have an opportunity to respond. I don't believe that the people in your state, nor the people in mine, would identify renaming the Gulf of Mexico as their top priority. And I find it absurd that we have to engage in this discussion to act as though this is anything but abnormal, that this is sort of just regular order, that yes, in the first 4 months of the 119th Congress, the Republican majority has decided that this is so important that we ought to take floor time to rename the Gulf of Mexico, notwithstanding all of the other policies that I suspect many of your supporters, many of the citizens that you represent are passionate about. I find that hard to believe. And apparently I'm the only one, or at least you and I disagree about this, but I suspect my colleagues maybe on this side of the aisle concur in that assessment. But in any event, I am happy to give you an opportunity to respond. And
so one of the things, Mr. Neguse, that you are ignoring is the fact that the state of Wyoming and my constituents in Wyoming have a very close connection to the Gulf of America because we are one of the largest energy producers in the nation. We are the largest coal producer. We're the eighth largest oil and gas producer. Our resources, our oil and gas and coal are actually exported out of the Gulf of America. So it is something that is at the forefront of the minds of the people in the state of Wyoming. I also want to point out one thing.
What does this bill do to help them?
I want to point out one other thing that you did, which is a very clever trick, which is that you asked me if I'd been asked any questions, and I told you that I had. And when you did your soliloquy there at the end, you accused me of being dishonest and disingenuous by then converting that to being the top priority. I didn't say that it was the top priority, but I did say that I was asked questions, and there has been discussions.
So let's have this semantics debate
not
then.
only in the meetings that I've held, but when I have met with people who actually have a direct connection to the Gulf of America. So I think what you're trying to imply is that Wyoming has no interest in the Gulf of America, when in fact the state of Wyoming, with our energy resources,
Ms. Hageman, have you testified in front of this? I've been generous with my time.
America.
Have you testified in front of this committee yet this year? Is this your first time testifying in front of this committee?
Probably this year, but not last year.
No, I'm asking you this year. I'm saying in the last 4 months, since the 119th Congress has started, this is your first time testifying, right?
I think so.
You're chairwoman of the Water, Fisheries, and Wildlife Subcommittee, are you not?
Yes.
And this is the first bill that you have decided to present to this committee on behalf of the state that you serve. So this notion, I'm saying to you, whether you or the Republican majority have picked this as a priority is besides the point. Clearly, this is what you all have decided to spend your time on in the opening months of the 119th Congress. Maybe that's what the people of, I guess, is what you're testifying to today, is that the people of Wyoming expect that from you, and they support that. I can certainly tell you that in Colorado, of all of the issues that are important to the residents of my state, Gulf of America renaming does not crack the top 3, the top 10 of issues that my constituents care about. You clearly feel differently. That's your prerogative. I'll yield back the balance of my time.
So, Mr. Yang, what is the census sort of used for? Why do we conduct this onerous process?
The principle used for the census is twofold. One is for the apportionment of Congress, the apportionment of seats in Congress. And the second is to get an accurate count of the population. So when we're distributing funds, whether it's $2.2 trillion in federal funds or state and local funds, that we're distributing in the right way. What that means literally is where roads are built, where schools are built, what services are needed in different communities. For businesses, what that means is what stores get built and what you stock in those shelves of those stores. I live in Fairfax County. The fact that our Costco has approximately seven different types of rice is a reflection of the fact that Fairfax County is about 20% Asian American.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. So, I would agree with that, right? Someone who lives in, a city, a county, a state, we're always fighting to get the resources that we need, and it's important to know how many people, regardless of where they come from, regardless of who they are, what they look like, right? What language they speak, what rice they like. It's important to know how many people are in a place so you know how many hospitals to have, how many schools to have, how many parks to have. Am I missing something here?
No, it is as very basic as that. And again, the point is to get an accurate count. One of the things that we've been talking about here is sort of what affects accuracy. And we've talked specifically about Texas and Florida as being inaccurate counts. Well, I would point out that in the case of Florida, the state government only allocated $300,000 to the count for the entire state, compared to the state of Alabama, a much smaller state, which allocated $1.2 million to the count of their residents. So how you do your get out the count operations will translate into how accurate the real results will be. There is a correlation there.
And I do understand that it seems like my Republican colleagues want to get rid of every single foreign-born person, in this country. as though it boggles the mind, because
I would object. I think that is attacking.
It's-
I think that is
taking my
attacking
time? I'd like to
individuals.
have my time.
I think that is attacking individuals.
Mr.
of
Chairman,
order.
could you restore the order if you would?
Hold on a
please?
second. Does the gentleman?
I made an opinion, I can have an opinion.
Is the gentlelady asking to strike?
I am. I'm asking to strike those words, accusing us of that level of racism.
It's not racist if you think it, I mean, it's my opinion. I think I have a right to have an opinion.
We'll suspend for 1 second. Will the gentlelady express the specific words you're asking to be
Specifically,
stricken?
what she stated was that the people on the other side wanted all foreign people to be removed from the country. And that's absolutely
As I mentioned,
untrue.
Mr. Chair,
And that
it's
is an
my
attack on every
opinion. I have
person
a right
on
to
this
my
side of the
opinion.
aisle.
I said I
am tired of
believe-
the allegations of racism.
Mr. Chairman,
Order.
that's
Let me
not.
suspend for a
I
second.
didn't use race at all.
Let me suspend for 1 moment.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, that's not engaging in personalities. It's not an ad hominem attack.
Yes,
She
it is.
disagrees. She can use her own time to explain why she disagrees.
Everyone suspend for 1 moment. Gentlelady from Wyoming, are you withdrawing the request to strike the words from the?
Yes,
gentlelady
just
from
want to
California?
point out the allegations are absolutely unsubstantiated, and it is
Mr. Chairman, could you
I-
instruct her to
yield
point
back.
it out on her own time?
And reclaiming the time, but the gentlelady from California, please proceed. We'll restore the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I don't want to use my own time saying, but I guess now perspectives and opinions are no longer important here in this committee. That seems like it would be a shame. Mr. Yang, we were talking about the census, and the question is, it kind of doesn't matter where you come from. If you're someplace, if you're using resources, it would be important for that jurisdiction, for that municipality to know that you are there. I mean, where I come from, if you get sick, you should go to the hospital. And the hospital's not supposed to say, well, who are you? Let me see all of your paperwork. I think the doctors take a Hippocratic oath to help anyone who's coming in bleeding, who would be wanting to need or use the resources that are available to them in that hospital. Do you understand sort of the question that I'm asking about why it's important just to know who is in a particular place?
That's absolutely right. With respect to public services, with respect to roads, that immigration status does not matter when it comes to the need for good roads, the need for good public services. And making sure we have an accurate count of our entire population. And again, if you even go to Supreme Court precedent in Ewenwell, they recognize that you should be doing total population counts, whole population counts for purpose of apportionment. The history on this has been very clear that the census is designed to count the entire population.
Thank you for that. You know, as I look at all of my questions, not one word in any of these questions is the word race. But so Mr. Yang, Assistant Attorney General Rodriguez says in his written testimony that apportionment should not account for those in a state unlawfully. What would be your response to that?
Well, I don't see anything in the Constitution that makes any sort of distinction. Rather, what the 14th Amendment provides in the census, in terms of apportionment, in Article 1, Section 2, with respect to the census, is the counting of whole persons. And it makes no distinction. Now, in the written testimony, it makes reference to the fact that somehow they should be part of a political community, but the notion of political community does not exist anywhere in the text of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, or the Apportionment Act, and certainly even the contemporary dictionaries that he cited, except for a reference to parish law, did not make any reference to being part of a political community. Rather, simply a resident is someone that has a normal place of domicile. Now, to be clear, there are rules that the census has with respect to people that are transient, with respect to people that have tourist visas, for example, should not be counted in the census. There are residency rules with respect to the census as to what is considered a resident.
So you mentioned whole person. In the constitutional framers use the phrase whole number of persons rather than citizen or voter. And why do you think they did that? Because, of course, when you say whole person, and of course I think, and this time I'm going to use race, but I'm going to talk about myself. There used to be a time when a black person was not even considered a whole person. It was like 3/5 of a person. So I'm getting a little triggered by that phrase. Can you explain sort of why the framers used that phrase?
You're correct, Representative. Unfortunately, when the Constitution was first adopted, slaves were not considered citizens, but and for purpose of the census was considered 3/5 of a person as a distinguished from a so-called whole person. And it wasn't until the 14th Amendment that citizenship was given to slaves, anyone born of slaves, and that sort of in making clear that when we are counting, we're still counting all persons in the state.
So tell me again, can you reiterate for the folks that can't seem to maybe hear what you're saying about why it's important to have an accurate count when you were doing the census?
Well, having an accurate count for purposes of data allows us to make sure that we have the services that we need in the United States for everyone. We need a society that has infrastructure for everyone. It is true for immigrants, non-immigrants alike. Certainly there can be policy debates around different aspects of that, but at least having the set accurate data that all of us can work from is critical to how this nation functions.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady from California. I would now recognize the gentlelady from Wyoming.
Well, first of all, I disagree with the idea that that there's a constitutional requirement for conducting a census so that we can have different varieties of rice at Costco. I almost want to say that almost all countries conduct a census.
Mr. Chair, that's racist.
Does the gentlelady have a? Does this gentlelady from Wyoming have a response?
Rice or hamburger or any other food stuff, that isn't why we conduct a consensus.
Mr. Chairman, those words, as ill-advised and foolish as they were probably not engaging in personalities. So I think we can let that go and call it even.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll withdraw.
I was using the terminology that Mr. Yang used, if you weren't listening.
I was listening, but I was also getting your vibe.
Almost all.
The gentlelady from Wyoming will proceed.
Many on the East Coast of America might be surprised to learn that the federal government owns massive amounts of the western states. In Wyoming, the federal government owns about half of our surface estate and 60% of the subsurface estate, or our minerals. In Northeast Wyoming, the Bureau of Land Management's Buffalo Field Office owns and manages over 788,000 acres of land and 4.7 million acres of our mineral estate. In its waning days, the Biden administration issued an RMP amendment for the Buffalo Field Office, which pursued the no new leasing alternative, pulling 481,000 acres of America's largest coal reserves and resources offline, making 48 billion short tons of coal unavailable and ending leasing in the Powder River Basin. The Biden administration's decision to terminate mining in Wyoming's PRB is not only irresponsible and harmful, but downright illegal, a mechanism used by the governing elite to inflict harm on every single citizen of this great country to further climate change lunacy.
As we're having this debate, pretty much the rest of the world is in Brazil right now for the climate conference. Of course, the Trump administration has disgracefully pulled the United States out of the Paris Agreement once again, so we have no federal delegation at all. But as the rest of the world convenes to accept the reality of the climate crisis and to accept the related reality of coal being the biggest contributor to carbon pollution, and the entire world is talking about how to phase down our dependence on coal pollution and fossil fuel pollution, we are here in this alternate reality of the Republican majority, where my colleague from Wyoming calls it climate lunacy. It's a sad, sad testament to, frankly, the disgraceful leadership of this Republican majority that propping up the coal industry with discounted royalties and massive subsidies and millions of acres of land giveaways, and now this misuse of the Congressional Review Act is the official policy of the Republican majority. It's just almost unthinkable, and yet that's where we are.
Today, the Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries will examine 4 bills that will foster good stewardship of taxpayer dollars, achieve better and more effective conservation outcomes, and provide necessary relief from predatory double-crested cormorants for aquacultural producers. Our first bill, sponsored by Congressman Arrington of Texas, would prevent the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service from implementing the Biden administration's land management plan for the Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge in West Texas and eastern New Mexico.
Before we hear a lot of overheated rhetoric about land grabs, let's set some facts here. Fish and Wildlife Service cannot seize land. It cannot pressure landowners. It may only acquire land, water, or other interests from willing sellers. Full stop. There is no land grab. That's a fiction designed to stir outrage, not an honest reflection of reality. But here we are. My Republican colleagues have brought another bill rooted in the same old hollow narrative where every conservation effort is cast as a government overreach and a conspiracy where public lands are treated like some kind of a looming threat instead of an intergenerational legacy. And the truth is just different. Muleshoe Land Protection Plan is a science-based voluntary initiative that offers landowners a new tool to manage their property while supporting conservation if they choose. It's the product of years of research, listening sessions, and direct engagement with the very people who live and work in the region. The plan doesn't restrict landowner rights, it expands them. It gives landowners a choice to conserve habitat for birds and wildlife, to be compensated for doing it, and to be part of something larger than their own fence lines. That is not a threat, it's a partnership. And it's exactly the kind of win-win conservation we should be lifting up, the kind that Republicans used to celebrate, and we shouldn't be tearing it down here today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 28 to prohibit federally funded schools from allowing men to compete in women's sports. Mr. Speaker, I find it truly staggering that we as Congress have to even consider such an issue, but here we are. Under the last 4 years of the outgoing administration, we have witnessed the imposition of a radical gender ideology that has disregarded the most fundamentals of biological principles with an expectation that Americans must redefine their perception and beliefs, no questions asked. We have stood by and watched as this administration and career D.C. bureaucrats have sought to twist and manipulate the meaning and purpose behind Title IX, which, if successful, would have disenfranchised the very women and girls that Title IX was meant to protect. Despite Title IX for over half a century since its inception, having paved the way for millions of women and girls, including myself, to achieve their dreams, its very existence has been consistently under threat on behalf of an unaccountable federal bureaucracy. It is past time that we as a government restore the sanity that has been lost over the last 4 years, and it brings me great pride to witness this critical issue at the forefront of the new Congress so that we may truly act upon the American people's mandate. As a co-sponsor of this bill, I want to thank Representative Stubbe, along with the Education and Workforce Committee, for their committed leadership on this issue, and I urge all my colleagues to support H.R. 28. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Oregon is recognized.
I now yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Representative Jacobs.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you. It's honestly hard to know where even to start with this bill. Maybe let's start with the name. This bill doesn't even come close to protecting women and girls in sports. In fact, it puts all women and girls in danger of sexual abuse. And I hear my colleagues say, no, this wouldn't require genital exams. Well, let me tell you, we've already seen an investigation like this happen at a high school in Utah. And unsurprisingly, they wrongly targeted someone who wasn't trans. Because if this bill is passed into law, there is only a few ways to actually enforce it, and that is genital inspections, that is asking young girls very inappropriate questions about their menstrual cycles. My colleagues know I'm 35 years old. I love talking about my period. I think it's important we talk about it. We shouldn't be making young girls answer these questions to people that they don't even trust. If this bill is passed into law, these kinds of secret investigations, shady questions, and surveillance of kids could happen all across this country. This does not protect women and girls. This only further jeopardizes their safety and security when they're playing in sports. This bill is sloppy, vague, and prejudiced. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as a queer woman, once the only girl on my Pee Wee football team, a graduate from a women's college, in strong opposition to H.R. 28. This bill makes schools less safe for women and girls. It gives every teacher, coach, and parent an opportunity to police who looks feminine enough to play. It will put all girls at risk of intrusive questions and physical genital examinations, dissuading girls' participation in sports. And as LGBTQ plus youth continue to face attacks and targeting from extremist lawmakers in legislative chambers across the country and higher rates of depression and suicide, this bill is doubly dangerous. In my community, I meet young people and parents over and over who fled states like Idaho and Texas and Florida because they want to live in safe, welcoming communities where they know they have a future. Well, there are real problems impacting women's sports, including sexual violence, lack of equal resources, and pay inequality. This bill does nothing to address them. I urge all my colleagues to focus on addressing the pressing issues facing everyday Americans and to reject this hateful, partisan legislation. And I yield back.
This is the third week we're in the 119th Congress, and the third week that no bill is before us to lower costs for Americans. Before us, instead, is a political attempt to divide us as a nation, stigmatizing some kids so some adults can get MAGA merit badges. The Republican governor of Utah vetoed a similar piece of legislation after he shared that of the 75,000 students in high school sports in Utah, only 4 were trans and only 1 a girl playing sports. But he also mentioned the very real 86% of trans kids reporting suicidality due to things like adults stigmatizing kids for political gain. Instead, today, the proposed solution is in search of an actual problem, suggests we somehow ban girls from sports with some sort of process to determine who is a girl. Does this mean hiring potential predators to peek at the private parts of kids in locker rooms? Now that sounds like an actual problem to me. Creating a solution to a non-existent problem by creating a problem instead of lowering costs for Americans is a sign of an ineffective congressional majority at best. I urge a no vote. And I yield back.
As a mother to a former child athlete, I get the need to keep our daughters safe and to ensure school sports are fair. Sadly, there is nothing in this bill to improve the safety of our daughters or improve fair play. In fact, the bill subjects girls, cisgender, transgender, all girls, to harm and ridicule and strips fairness from players and parents and school communities. This bill sets up an unfair playing field where any parent can raise a concern that a transgender girl may be playing on a girls' team. And we know this is so very rare. It's unfair to the girls who may be targeted because they grow faster, play harder, or simply might be more talented than their teammates. This bill is unfair to the school districts who can't navigate the threats of lawsuits but also can't afford to lose federal funding, leaving students without sports or school meals. This bill is unfair to the girl athletes who could be subject to genital inspections and subject to humiliation, leaving them with a legacy of trauma rather than the lessons of teamwork and sportsmanship. Finally, this bill is unfair to the American people who are demanding that we take their call to address the cost of living seriously. I urge my colleagues to leave these decisions in the hands of parents and local sports authorities and vote no on H.R. 28. I yield back.